Welcome back to Taiwan Outlook. Our guest today is Mr. Lawrence Walker. He's press officer at the AIT. Mr. Walker, we've been talking about public diplomacy and educational exchange is one of very important tool in promoting the understanding between our two societies. But for students in Taiwan, if they are thinking about going to study in your country, what should they be prepared, in terms of, psychologically or physically?
Well, first they should make sure that they're going to the right place to study what they want to study. And for that reason, we have two organizations that we work with and that we partially help to fund, which can advise students and help them find a study plan and help them find the appropriate university to go to. They should obviously prepare enough funds and such to go. It's not an inexpensive proposition, though it can certainly pay for itself over the course of a career through enhanced career prospects and possibilities. Otherwise, I would say be prepared for a rather different environment, keep an open mind, stay in there. I have studied abroad myself, and I've also had friends who have studied abroad, including people who even come to the United States. And for anyone, I say, just give it 30 days. The first 30 days are the toughest. After that, you will grow to like it, but the first 30 days are very tough anywhere.
But some people and some students complain that it's more and more competitive to get fellowships or scholarship in American universities. Is that the case?
I don't know the specifics of it, but I do know that budgets are tight at many, particularly public universities everywhere, and certainly American students are competing more and for places. So I imagine this would affect people studying abroad.
In addition to getting a degree in the United States, I think short-term visits or short-term studies could also be a choice as well. Are you also promoting short-term studying tour in your country?
That's interesting. I don't know. I'd refer you to the educational advising organizations that we work with, but certainly for some fields or to learn certain things, a short-term course of study might be more appropriate. Certainly, even a couple of months of intensive English in the United States could work wonders.
That's right. Let's talk about your personal experience of working and you used to be studying in Taiwan as well.
Yes.
So, looking back, what's the most memorable experience you have in Taiwan?
The most memorable experience that I had in Taiwan recently.
Studying or working in Taiwan.
I think just the experience of it. I think the first things that occurred to me when I worked in Taiwan before, and it had been my first time even being present in East Asia, is how you can have a society come. It was 1985 to 86. I was at the American Institute in Taiwan, but in the language school.
Okay.
That you can have a society that's comes from a completely different part of the world, completely different language based on completely different principles and such, and still come to fairly similar conclusions in terms of social values, people's comportment, and such. It shows me that there's a way you can build a society up with completely different building blocks and still arrive at a similar place.
When you first came here, do you feel very strong cultural shocks, when you're coming to Taiwan?
I did just to some extent. The people helped a lot because the people were quite friendly and very open and very accepting. And I was very happy here, particularly the first time when it was most important to. The language shock was a bit much. I had some Chinese, but I think particularly walking around and barely being able to read was sort of a shock for a person who's gone through a fair amount of higher education to have to encounter.
Was it hard to study Chinese, Mandarin?
It still is hard. The tones are something that we're not used to in our language. It's in English, say, except at the sentence level, and being aware of the tone is an integral part of the word. Also, the written language has been the greatest challenge for me, even today. I mean, now I can go by in the taxi on the way here and read the signs, pretty much with no problem, but I read Portuguese at the same level as I read Chinese, and I read Portuguese 5 times faster because it has an alphabet.
Latin, yeah, that's right.
Because it has an alphabet, simply. I could probably read a newspaper in romanization as fast as I read Portuguese.
That's right. But as you mentioned, you came here in 1985, 86, when Taiwan was still under authoritarian rule. Now it's a free and democracy.
Yeah.
What's the most important difference have you noticed, between 20 years from now and now?
Well, it seems to be a much more vibrant place. Also, the thing that really strikes you is the amount of development, prosperity that have come about. It used to be before there was no MRT, there was no subway system here, and also I went down in the area where I used to live in a place that used to sell pets and had cages with dogs out on in the rain and such. Now sells automobiles. You have high-level, even luxury stores all over the place, very many chains, and in a way to go to the old-fashioned Taiwan, you have to get deeper and deeper and deeper into the alleys to see the type of things that I used to see on the main streets. There's much more open debate. There's more open debate about future directions of Taiwan, which way it should go in its destiny. Things that essentially were not talked about when I lived in Taiwan before, or if people talked about them, they looked around and were worried about real possible consequences.
But they are concerned about this kind of division of the society, the future direction of this country, blue versus green and so on. As an observer, outside observer, how do you see that kind of so-called division in Taiwan society?
Well, as an outside observer who works for the U.S., of course, we're hoping that people will try to stick to the status quo and not do something that puts Taiwan's future and to some extent ours in danger. But it's normal to have a debate about such things and try to bring out some conclusions and maybe try to find some common ground so one can work together. Because after all, everyone's going to live together in the society, and at least it's good to find some things that everyone can agree on.
What's the key pillars to the U.S. policy when it comes to the issue of Taiwan's future?
For right now, barring major changes that I won't and can't speculate on, it really is Taiwan's security. Taiwan, and we believe that we've been well served by the status quo, as imperfect as it is, and we hope that as long as the conditions that are behind the status quo remain much the same as they are, that the status quo will also continue. Yeah,
the word status quo has been brought up all the time, but different sides have different interpretation or definition of status quo. What's the U.S. definition of the so-called status quo?
It's to a certain extent the U.S. leaves status quo undefined, but it's essentially when you really come down to the bottom line is that Taiwan be allowed to decide its own direction without undue coercion from the outside.
I see. But for many people in Taiwan, the status quo is not a good thing for Taiwan because they are looking for more participation in international activities and so on. What's the U.S. position on Taiwan's international participation?
The U.S. Supports Taiwan's meaningful participation in international organizations and certainly has much to contribute to just about any international organization's activities. But we are against Taiwan's full membership in any international organization for which statehood is a prerequisite.
So WHO, take a look at the case of WHO. So you support Taiwan's observer status, not as a full member.
That's correct.
How about UN?
That's a whole other issue that I haven't reviewed the policy on that, and we've gone through some things on the UN referendum.
Okay.
But generally, meaningful participation where it makes sense in organizations that do not require statehood.
In recent months, our government, new government, has been trying everything they can to improve the ties between Taiwan and China. How does the U.S. see the improvement of bilateral relations between Taiwan and China?
We welcome it. It's about time. It's important that Taiwan and the mainland of China have a harmonious and constructive relationship. And again, we're for what Taiwan thinks is good for it, as long as Taiwan isn't coerced into some sort of situation that it doesn't want to be in.
Do you think there will be a possibility of conflict, military conflict in the Taiwan Strait in the near future?
I certainly hope not.
How about continuing dialogues between Taiwan and other so-called major allies, or cooperation between major allies, including U.S., Japan, and so on? Do you think that is very important for Taiwan to have this kind of political, even military dialogues between Taiwan and those countries?
I think it's important that that there be dialogue on all sides and in all directions at all times, and we're here partly to engage in that.
Taiwan is a member of the APEC, and as a matter of that would be the only major economic forum that Taiwan would be able to participate. And there's a concern that Taiwan would be marginalized in this regional economic integration. And is there anything that the U.S. can help us to be able to be part of this regional integration?
Well, we encourage Taiwan to participate as it has and as it does in APEC and in the regional economic dialogue, bilaterally and to the extent that it can, given some of the limitations, multilaterally.
Yeah. Finally, as a press office, you've been very active in providing information to the media here in Taiwan to have more understanding about your country. Do you think, is there any misperception or misimage about your country in the local media here in Taiwan?
Well, it's almost impossible to avoid. I mean, one cannot go in and understand the totality of some place. And obviously the media in Taiwan are more focused on Taiwan politics than they are on U.S. politics. So they'll see the side of the U.S. that deals more with Taiwan, and we'd like them to see more of the U.S. as the U.S. is.
Do you think there's any fixed image about you, fixed perception about the U.S. in Taiwan, which is not very correct?
There may be fixed perceptions among different people. Their own political perceptions may influence that, but it does seem to me that there is enough contact by enough people with enough sectors of U.S. society, so that there is actually a fairly full picture when you take a group of people. You might not come to some of the distortions that you're thinking of.
I know you also invite media people from Taiwan to visit other your countries and so on.
Yes.
Do you continue to have that kind of programs?
Yes, we do.
To invite media people from Taiwan to visit the States?
Yes. The International Visitor Leadership Program is open to people in all sorts of fields, and we regularly do send working members of the media on programs to the United States. There are also some other things, more opportunistic ones, available through our foreign press centers. Foreign media can use foreign press centers located in Washington, New York, and Los Angeles. Once they're accredited with them, they can go either as resident correspondents or as visitors and get access to these offices, which are run by the State Department, which exist for the purpose of essentially making it possible for foreign media to get access to our own official structure and to various parts of U.S. society, essentially by providing a bit of an introduction.
That's right.
And we have a number of things coming up for the elections, for instance, where they will embed foreign journalists in with media teams. Part of the problem that we have on some of these is a few of them require people to pay their own airfare, and then they take over once they're in the United States, and so they're a bit less attractive. But there are a number of programs going on where we either fund them all or fund them partially, or make it possible for someone who wants to get to the United States to be able to cover things.
Good. Mr. Walker, thank you very much for coming to our program.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Loh.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for watching Taiwan Outlook, and see you next time.